Tennessee is known for its music, its whiskey, its food, and good old Southern hospitality. But that's just the beginning. From back roads to main streets, we're digging into the people, places, and moments that shape the state. This is Tennessee Unpacked.
All right, welcome to Tennessee Unpacked. I'm Ryan French, your host, joined today with my co-host, Kelly Murphy, and Visit Columbia.
Hello.
Today, we are celebrating America's 250. We're talking about the celebrations coming up. As America celebrates its 250th birthday, we're reflecting on the ideals, the struggles, achievements, everything that has come together to bring us to where we are in seeking the more perfect union still today. From trailblazers to entrepreneurs, the quiet change makers. Columbia's story has shaped individuals with vision, talent, and courage that has left this community a pretty diverse and wonderful place to be and celebrate America's 250. So, Kelly, when you think of America's history, Columbia is riddled with it. It's a wonderful place to celebrate history. What comes to mind for you?
A lot comes to mind. Our architects of history come to mind. And those people that we're calling architects of history, those influential people who helped shape Columbia and therefore shape America, didn't just witness change, they made it. They're the reason we are where we are today. You know, laying that foundation of progress, the culture and resilience that continue in this community today, something we can all be proud of. The same spirit that built this country still shows up today for the people in this area who serve, who lead and choose to build something in their own communities, like our two lovely guests here today.
Yeah. So we have two wonderful guests to come and celebrate with us. I'll start with Joanne, let you introduce yourself and what you do here in Maury County, and welcome to Tennessee Unpacked.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I was born and raised here in Maury County in a rural community. I attended a Rosenwald school in the community. I attended Carver Smith High School, Tennessee State. I have a BS degree in applied mathematics. And after college, I went to work for several Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. My husband was in the military, so we traveled. I've lived in 6 states. Wow. In 1999, I retired, and we decided to move back to Columbia. I brought him to this little small town. He was from Knoxville, Tennessee. So we moved back to Columbia on property. We live on property that's been in my family for over 100 years. And when I came back, I became actively involved in the Genealogical Society of Maury County. And from that, I started this passion for history. And I realized that the African American cemeteries had not been transcribed. So I spent 4 years walking this county transcribing the African American cemeteries in Maury County. And then my interest in history just grew. I was a member of the Maury County Historical Society Board. And a result of the lack of preservation of African American history, in 2012, I started the African American Heritage Society of Maury County. I was appointed county historian in 2020, and I also serve on 2 state-level boards.
Very cool. You gotta read the resume when it gets that long.
So much for being retired.
Yeah, you've retired. That's a loosely used word. So Joanne Williams McClellan, I should have introduced you by your full name, but welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you today. And then we have a second guest, Kelly. I'll let you introduce her.
Tom Price, Maury County Archives. You have quite a history in Columbia. Would you tell us a little about yourself and what all you've done here?
Yeah, Columbia has been home for me for 30 years this year, actually. So I came from upstate New York. I worked at the Governor Silas Wright Museum right out of undergraduate school, and did that for 4 years. He was a contemporary of Jackson and Polk, and so when the James K. Polk Museum did a search for their next curator, it was a national search. It just kind of fit my wheelhouse entirely. So I applied for the position, was fortunate enough to get it, and I was the curator of the Polk home for 21 years. And then decided in 2018 maybe a change was in order, and the position of director of the Maury County Archives opened up, and I applied for it and did that, and I've been doing that ever since. So Columbia and Columbia's history and Maury County's history is absolutely a passion for me. It's what we do, what Joanne and I get to do every day. We're so blessed.
Yeah, that is amazing. So have you ever found anything in archives that completely changed how we understand our history?
I mean, just really all the time, right?
All the time?
History is not static. It's not just something you read in a book. We're uncovering information all the time. And Maury County is unique in that we have every document that the county has ever generated from 1807 with the formation of the county until now. The Maury County Archives has every deed, every marriage record, every last will and testament. It has every court case that's ever happened. We don't have to guess at our history here. We just have to look it up. And fortunately for us in Maury County, we have an amazing archives facility that really no other county in the state can compare to. It's really pretty incredible. And the reason for that is the people of Maury County, the county commission understands the history here. Everybody's sort of connected to the history that's here. The history in Maury County is deep and it's rich. It's nationally significant in a lot of cases. So to have an archives facility where we can go and look up this information is hugely important and incredibly unique. So to your question, do we uncover things? We uncover new information all the time. One of the ones that's happening right now, and I want to mention Dr. Randy Bronner, he's the one who's really conducting the research on this. The influence of William Polk. We know that the Polk family is hugely influential here, with James K. Polk, of course, being the 11th president of the United States. He's really the most boring out of his whole family. He was the president, but he didn't have any hobbies. He didn't have any kids that did terrible things. He didn't even have pets. There's a presidential pet museum. He doesn't even make it into that. So he did incredible things, of course. During his presidency, he's our expansionist president. He's probably the president who managed to accomplish more in a single term than any other president in American history. But William Polk, who would be his, let me think for a second, great uncle, I think, was from North Carolina, but we're just uncovering his influence here. By the time he died, William, who lived most of his life in North Carolina, but we're learning now through the records that he spent a significant amount of time here, he owned more than 175,000 acres of land at the time of his death. The reason for that is he's the linchpin in how Tennessee, more broadly, develops out. He is the legal precedent. What he does becomes the legal precedent of how land is distributed and developed out early on. So Tennessee is originally part of North Carolina. He's in North Carolina. He comes here as one of the surveyors of Tennessee as it comes away from North Carolina, becomes its own entity. He's in Chancery Court here as an owner of this land, but far, far away, right? People are moving here. They're going onto his land, and he's saying that you can't just do that. I own all that land. So it goes to Chancery Court in Columbia. He loses 3 times in Chancery Court in Columbia. It goes all the way to the United States Supreme Court 2 times, and Chief Justice John Marshall sides with him both times. He becomes the precedent for how Tennessee develops out, and that story all happens here in Maury County. We're just starting to understand this broader picture. It's pretty incredible.
Amazing.
But all the time we're finding new stories through these records that tell us what they are. Every document that we have tells a little bit of the history of Maury County.
Love that.
Joanne, you said that your work started with the search for your great-grandmother. So how did that research and how did that kind of trigger the passion and lead more into what you do?
Well, I belong to a huge family here in Maury County, and my grandmother and her first cousin started this family reunion doing the family reunion every year back in 1972. So when I had the time to come down, I thought about doing a family genealogy tree. And when I started that, the tree just kept growing and growing and growing. And I found this one person, and I couldn't find very much information about her. So I just started searching cemetery records. And I found that she was buried in a white cemetery up in Santa Fe, where I live. And that just sort of started like everything, you know. And I published a family genealogy book, I think in 2013, it was like 6 or 8 generations. I need to add another 5 generations to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's important as we're celebrating America 250 that we obviously look at, acknowledge, and celebrate our own history. So we created Columbia 250USA.com, where we're basically the keepers of any events that are going on in the area, whether it's a lecture series or a parade or whatever might be going on for the 250th this year. But we also created a segment on there that we're calling the Architects of History. And those are 26 figures that we have picked that have been influential in helping to shape Columbia. And I want to thank both of you because you are the reason we have those 26 individuals. We are featuring them around town on some of our street banners, and of course that drives people to the website to learn more. And then the very short bios on each of them are also listed on the website. So again, thank you both for doing that. Obviously, we have many more influential historic figures in this town than what we were able to showcase basically on our banners and on the website. Was it difficult for each of you to decide who to put on that list? I'm sure it could have been, 10 times as large as it is.
No, for me, not, because I was focused on a specific area and people who were the first to fight for our civil rights, the first to establish a school, the first to establish a hospital, the first people. And I was also focused on people from Murray County. Yeah. People who were actually born in Murray County, contributed to the community building in Murray County, the schools, the churches, the benevolent organizations. So it really wasn't difficult at all for me.
Yeah, it was for me.
Had to be for somebody.
Because there are so many people that, for first, certainly at a local level, but so many of the folks like William Polk, again, that I mentioned, he's a Revolutionary War hero, like a bona fide hero. He was wounded a couple of times during the war. So that's where our connection with Murray County goes all the way back to the founding of our country.
Yeah.
There's a direct line with that. And then it just goes from there, just following the Polk family itself. You have congressmen, you have military heroes, you have politicians like James K. Polk. That's just in one family alone. So broadening that out, we could sit down right now and probably come up with a list of 50 to 75 people that have an impact beyond the boundaries of Murray County. It's that influential here. So it was a little bit of a challenge to narrow it down to a relative few. And I think we chose ones that were really the most influential that come from here. Where Joanne was thinking more the local influence here, which is amazing. I think our viewpoint was one where they start life here, they're influenced by growing up here or spending time here, and then how does that translate to what they do in their lives that go beyond the boundaries of Murray County? Good list, I think.
But not necessarily so. The person that was at the top of my list was a guy named Edmund Kelly. And Edmund Kelly, although he was born and raised here, his influence reached across the United States. He was with the ministers that met with Abraham Lincoln after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And from that, he encouraged, and other ministers encouraged Lincoln to recruit the former slaves to fight in the Civil War. And as a result of that, we had over 100,000 African Americans, former slaves, that fought in the Civil War, 400 from here. So the people that I say are first, they're first not only in Murray County, but first to make contributions to not only this county, the state, and the country. So, and then one of the other men that I selected was a John W. Johnson. Yes, he was probably one of the first educators here in Columbia, but he was the first African-American president of Roger Williams University on a state level. So the people that I thought about contributed a lot more than just local. I looked at first, but first across the country.
Fascinating.
So you're both uncovering and preserving these stories, and now Columbia is giving them a new life through this celebration this year. We'll get more into this in segment 2 and we'll be right back on Tennessee Unpacked. All right, welcome back to Tennessee Unpacked. We are joined today with two distinguished guests here in Maury County, Tom and Joanne, in your distinct roles in history and preserving history. Before we went to the break, Joanne, you were kind of describing how you put together your list and how you structured that. Pick one architect that people may not know and give their story that we can highlight in this process.
Well, I always go back to the same guy, and that was Edmund Kelly, because of his influence, and not only him, but his children. Yeah. They also influenced the history of Maury County. But Edmund Kelly did not learn to read and write until he was 17 years old, and he went to work. His owner sent him to work for a boys' school, and he paid the boys with candy to teach him to read and to allow him to use his books. And then after that, he left. He bought his wife and children from James K. Polk's brother-in-law. He left here, went to New Bedford, Massachusetts. He was one of the first to publish learning material teaching the slaves how to study the Bible. And his meeting with Lincoln, his meeting with Johnson, his story just continued. And then his son decided to come back here to visit some of his relatives and found out that there were no schools here for African Americans. So he started the very first public school for African Americans here in Maury County. Their story just goes on. His other son, in Edmund Kelly, encouraging the former slaves to fight in the Civil War. His one son fought with the 54th Massachusetts Unit. He came back here and was the president of the first colored YMCA. So the legacy of Kelly just continues on and on. And I am friends with his great-great-great-great-grandson, and they're making their mark in another state. So it just continues on.
It's amazing.
That's fascinating.
Shifting a little bit now towards with this effort, there's obviously a tourism component to this, and I think that's interesting for our area specifically because there's so much history, and it bleeds over. Tom, you kind of hinted towards that in the first segment, but for someone that's visiting Columbia for a weekend per se, what's one stop that would really kind of tell the story and totality of this place if you tried to capture that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Probably the James K. Polk home probably would be the kind of the centerpiece for the history here because it encompasses so much. Yes, it's a presidential site, which is pretty rare in the United States. With the number of presidents, not too many towns can claim themselves as a presidential town. Columbia does that really well. But James K. Polk as a president, one of the most fun things about working there, honestly, for 21 years is nobody knows about James K. Polk, right? I didn't learn about him in school. He's one of those presidents who tends to be lost to history, but he's hugely influential. So it was fun from the perspective that by the time people left, they'd be like, I can't believe I didn't know more about that guy. But his story and his success and how it leads to where we are today, he's sort of a centerpiece for that, right? So he grows up here in Maury County, just outside of Columbia, when this is the western frontier of the United States. His father and grandfather are both land surveyors. They're acquiring land that way. Those are the stories he's growing up with, right? That land equates to wealth. Land equates to success. So by the time he's running for president, and he wasn't supposed to be president, he's our first dark horse president in American history. He'd been 14 years in Congress, governor of Tennessee for a term, and then the bottom falls out. He loses 2 bids for re-election for governor. He's at the lowest point in his political career, and through a number of incredibly weird events, he winds up with the nomination for the presidency in 1844 against Henry Clay, a household name in American politics. James K. Polk he had a good career, but he wasn't that guy, right? He was not a household name. In fact, Henry Clay's campaign slogan was, "Who is James K. Polk?" Like he was trying to cash in on the fact that nobody really knew who he was. Polk wins because of his ideas on American expansion. When he's running for president of the United States, the big phrase is manifest destiny, the idea that it was God's will that the United States should stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Well, he's the man for the time, right? Why? Because he grew up in Maury County, Tennessee, when this is the western frontier. He learned firsthand what expansion means, that there's always more prosperity over the next Western hill. Why shouldn't America do the same thing? So that's a direct correlation between growing up here and his policies that would lead to, you consider when he was a kid, the western boundary of the United States was Tennessee. By the time he left office, 40 years later, the western boundary of the United States was the Pacific Ocean. That's not by accident. I think that has everything to do with him growing up here when this was the western frontier of the United States. So it's a big story, and it leads to a whole bunch of other stories as well, from the impact of slavery and enslavement in America. You're going to learn that story at the Polk home. The Civil War is the culmination of that, of course. You're going to learn that at the Polk home as well. American imperialism and expansion, those are all sort of stories that are happening in modern times today. You can make those correlations. Partisan politics, that's a watchword for today. Very much the same during Polk's tenure as a politician as well. So you can learn a lot, not just a focused story of James K. Polk, but you're going to learn so much more when you go to a historic site like that.
It's definitely an expanded history lesson to visit the Polk home. It's pretty incredible. Joanne, you've got a special project that you are working on for a future cultural center in downtown Columbia. I know that is near and dear to your heart. Will you share with us about that project?
Well, yes. Since 2012, the African American Heritage Society has been researching and documenting African American history. And there are so many stories that are not told. Yeah. We hear about slavery and atrocities, but we don't hear about these other stories. So back in 2014, the Society did a strategic plan. And as a part of our strategic plan, we identified the need for a museum and cultural center. So in 2014, we purchased one of the most significant sites as it relates to African American history in this county, and that was the A.J. Morton and Son Funeral Home. And the A.J. Morton and Funeral Home is important because it was a business that started doing reconstruction. The our first funeral home was on South Main Street, and after the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, separate but equal, all of the African American businesses migrated to a certain area in Columbia. This funeral home is on the National Registry and has been on the National Registry since 1984. And the other historical significance is that of women's history. The 3 generations of Morton women kept this business going after their husbands died until their sons could take over for almost 100 years. That is very, very significant. Amazing. The other thing is it was a strategy center for something called the Columbia Uprising. And because of that and the other history, we have the A.J. Morton and Son Funeral Home listed in the Civil Rights Network. And once the museum is open, we're going to put that on the Civil Rights Trail. The other thing about the society, because of our interpretive programming, because of the work that we've done over the years to collect this history, we're in something called the National Reconstruction Era Network. And we need this facility, number one, to continue our programming, to continue our lecture series, but also to tell these stories. So this site will be a place where we will, starting from when the county started, starting from 1776, we're going to be telling the entire story. So much of the African American history has never been told. We had a situation about 18 months ago, where someone came to me and said, we're tired of just hearing negative history. Give us something positive to talk about that we can share with our kids. So we started sharing some of this history through the publication of an annual history calendar, and we've done that since 2015. But we want to have this information available to people where they can come and leisurely understand this history. And one thing the African American Heritage Society is also doing, we are establishing a reputation across the state as a significant legitimate preservation organization. And because of our work, we have been asked to participate in a lot of state level projects. In fact, because of our work, I served on the board at the Tennessee State Museum. We were asked to host an exhibit down here. We hosted that exhibit. Also, we hosted an exhibit from the Smithsonian, and this is because of our reputation across the state as a legitimate historic preservation organization. But these stories that are from Maury County, connected to the state, connected to the U.S., we want to have these stories available to people constantly, and this is one of the reasons why we're working very hard to create this museum and culture center. And once we're up and running, we're going to join another network, a third network, and it's called the Underground Network to Freedom, because there's a connection to the Underground Railroad in Maury County. So we're going to be affiliated with 3 national networks. And in talking to the people from these national organizations, one thing that they stress, and I tend to have a Zoom meeting with them very frequently, one thing that they stress is the importance of using original source documentation. And this is where my friend Tom comes into play with his wonderful archives, where we can find a lot of this original source documentation. And there's just so much from this county that people just don't know. You know, I mentioned that I attended a Rosenwald school. Tennessee, Maury County had the best Rosenwald school development program in the state. Nobody knows about that. Most people don't even know what a Rosenwald school was. But it's so significant to our history. And out of those Rosenwald schools came people like Apollo space scientists, like medical research chemists. You know, we've got attorney generals. I mean, there was just so much out of this county as it relates to African American history that people don't know, don't appreciate. And it's not just county, it's state and national history also.
I think one of the interesting, I have 5 boys, and so you can imagine we get creative on the weekends on what we're trying to do. Museums play a big role in that, mostly because they're donations. And what I've always found fascinating, specifically with museums that we visit, is that, you know, like James, let's just talk James K. Polk for just a second. Like, you go there anticipating that you know about kind of what the subject matter is going to be, but then it spreads and it goes in, like we've talked about William today. I think African American history is even more of, you have that same, you know, dichotomy there. Vivian Sims, we worked with her, our organization worked with Vivian and Pulaski quite closely, and you know, may she rest in peace, but she's a wonderful lady, and all the efforts that she's made for African American history there. But I think what's neat about it is once you go to these museums, specifically with African American history and culture, is that we're still learning a lot of that. And you're talking about the original source material. You know, I'll let both of you speak to this, but how important is it, not only from a preservation standpoint, but like we're still learning a lot of kind of the how our country is, how the maps led us to here, and then how can we look at that and kind of set a path forward together? And
well, I think we need to document based on original source documentation and share the information. And like with you, I took, when they were small, I took my grandchildren to museums all the time. You know, I took my son to museums in Washington when he was a kid, and frequently, and in fact, I have visited every African American museum in Tennessee just to see how they are telling the story. But in talking to most of those people, there's still more to tell. And we need to make sure that we tell the story, tell the correct story, and make sure that it is factual. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of information. It's not factual. It's based on someone's third-handed interpretation of what they think happened. But we just need to tell the story, you know. And I can remember taking my grandchildren to, like, the Tennessee State Museum. They've been there every time they came to Tennessee. They went to the Tennessee State Museum, and there's always something new for them to discover. And we just continue to need to do that, you know. Share that knowledge, and just make sure that when you're talking to them about history, it is factual. I recently had a conversation with my 22-year-old grandson about genealogy. And, Grandma, where did we come from? Yeah. I said, let's go back to the Congo region of Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that is the greatest challenge for us because we uncover these stories all the time. How do we promulgate that information? How do we get that out there? How do we get it into the classroom? What's the most effective way? And we have to use them all, right? We have to do social media. I have a podcast that Joanne is a regular co-host on called History's Hook that starts with a local story and connects it to national and world history. We're never going to run out of subjects. That's how much information we're finding all the time. The challenge is, how do we get it out there? How do we get into the classroom? That's what makes Joanne's project, I think, really the game changer more than anything, especially when it comes to African American history, is if we can open a cultural center and museum, people will have for the first time a place where they can come and learn these stories. It's one thing that we go into the classroom and tell the story, you know, they'll get it that day, but that has a finite use. Having a museum, a place where people can come and see and experience, see tangible objects that speak to it, that help fill in that story, that gap. I wasn't a great learner in a classroom my own self. Where I loved history, where history sort of permeated me, was to go to a historic site, see these places. And so getting these stories out effectively is hugely important. The other thing is preserving as much as we can. Mm-hmm. We are really fortunate in Murray County that we have the history here, and we're all connected to it more than anything. Recently, there was the Ashwood Hall property was about to be developed out. Because there's so much growth that's happening here, there are a lot of spaces that we're in jeopardy of kind of losing. And I'm not against development. We need to have development here. But there are certain spaces in Murray County that, to me, as a historian, are absolutely sacred, right? We need to preserve them as much as we can. And so having that element as well is really important. So historic preservation. I'm starting a new nonprofit called Murray Preservation Alliance, and the job of that organization will be, one, first and foremost, education. Get that information out there to the people and help them understand the importance of history here in this space. Two is the advocacy element of it. We want to be a voice at the table with various municipalities as development happens here. I want them to come and say, Tom, what used to be on this property? I want developers to ask that question too. So as they develop out a property, if there's an amazing story to tell, that could be incorporated into the development. I think that raises the value of the property significantly as well. And finally, fundraising to do actual historic preservation. We want to preserve cemeteries. There are over 600 cemeteries in Murray County alone, and all of them have stories to tell. Land, of course. And historic properties, historic architecture. We have amazing architecture in Murray County that spans from 1807 and log structures all the way until postmodern architecture here as well. It spans all of time. So we need to preserve them as much as we can. So that's an element I think that we really need to do a little bit better job of. So Joanne and I have both spent a significant amount of time trying to learn these stories and understand these stories and preserve them either through the stories themselves or through preserving the tangible evidence left behind for us to see.
To me, what's sort of discouraging is that in the rural communities, a lot of the historic properties in the rural communities have already been destroyed. I've worked on 2 projects with the MTSU Center of Historic Preservation. And one project, we drove the county looking at historic properties, specifically schools, the Rosamond schools in Murray County. And when I first came back here, there were about 8 schools still standing. Now I think there may be only 2. They mysteriously burned, or someone decided to tear it down, or whatever. And those schools should be preserved. And other communities are preserving those schools. Williamson County, they moved one of their schools just to keep it safe. But here, we don't seem to put an important significance to those buildings in the rural communities, like the Rosamond schools, and they played such an important part to educating people in the rural communities, and we need to preserve them. It's unfortunate that they didn't give them back to the community, because the community participated in the purchasing of those schools, of building those schools. It's unfortunate that the county didn't give it back to the community. Instead, they were properties of the county. The county decided to tear them down or do whatever, or not preserve them or sell them or whatever. That's really, really unfortunate. And Murray County had 15 Rosamond schools, and I think, like I said, there are only maybe 2
We've
standing.
lost one in the last 6 months.
Yes.
So that's,
Yes.
we're at a critical time in our history because of the growth that's happening now, that we need to do our part I think all of us need to do our part. We have a responsibility to save as much as we can and document these places before they're gone.
It's growth, and it's people not understanding the history. They don't know the significance of this. You know,
Goes back to what you said, getting in the classroom, having that understanding.
Yes.
Joanne, Tom, thank you guys so much for being with us in these first 2 segments on Tennessee Unpacked. We could literally be here for days, I think, having this conversation. But thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for joining us today, listening to Tennessee Unpacked. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Tennessee Unpacked. Today we're talking all things America 250 here in Columbia, Tennessee. And just a reminder, as you go through this episode, we want to keep reminding you of that website, Columbia250USA.com. Learn more about everything that's going to be happening with the 250th anniversary or birthday of our country here in Columbia, Tennessee.
Yay.
Awesome.
So Kelly,
Yes. Our next guest.
Segment
Another
3. We're
another
winding
great
down.
friend. Another familiar face around Columbia, Mr. Chris Coyne.
Good morning.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Please share a little bit about your life and your family, your space in this community, which is pretty big. A lot of layers to Mr. Chris Coyne, and your amazing military service.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, this is it's very kind for you to think of me, for sure. You right off the bat, I guess the first thing you'll notice is my goofy accent. Right? It's a hodgepodge of a number of things. I grew up in Rhode Island, and was there for most of my childhood, and joined the military at 17, the Air Force. And I did so primarily because it was a family. It was kind of a family business, you know, Dad and my favorite uncle and grandfather, and just a rich history in the Coyne family of service. And so left home at 17 and joined the military. I did come back for a little while and joined the reserves after active duty, and then went back on active duty shortly after that. But a full 27 years in the Air Force.
Oh, nice.
And it feels like a dream, to be honest. Sometimes I've been retired for 15 years now, and it doesn't seem real, but it's all too wonderfully real, actually. Just a super great career. I met my wife in graduate school at the University of Tennessee, go Vols, and she was from this area. So her mom and dad moved here from Michigan early on, and when I retired, actually we were heading to Charleston, South Carolina. That's where we wanted to retire, and the good Lord called us here instead to be closer to my wife's family. And boy, did he know what he was doing. Mercy. I mean, this was not on the bingo card.
Yeah.
But it's singularly the greatest move we've ever made, that I've ever made as a military guy. This amazing community that we get to be, we're very fortunate to be part of now. And it's been great. 2015, when we moved here, I met these quote-unquote 2 hipsters that own this coffee shop that are trying to figure out what to do with it. And I was an executive coach and a speaker at the time, and I didn't, quite honestly, I didn't even drink coffee. And so I just met these 2 guys. I thought they were great, and I offered to help them figure out what they were doing in business and culture. And lo and behold, in 2019, the majority owner decided he wanted to go and start some new businesses. So I wanted to get off the road. Our kids were getting older. And so my now partner and friend, Matt Johnson, and I joined hands and in Muletown Coffee, and haven't looked back. It's been a true blessing. Yeah, I guess the only other thing important to say was I have, my wife is Kelly, and we have 2 amazing children. Our daughter, Isabella, who will be married in October.
I heard about that.
How
Congratulations.
exciting is that? Yeah, and to a wonderful, wonderful young man. And our son, Brody, turned 18 yesterday.
Wow.
And he is headed to England to play soccer in August.
Oh,
So
my.
He'll be over there for a 10-month contract with a club, and we'll see what happens from there. I'm very, very proud of both of our children. They're wonderful, wonderful young people. And yeah, That's I guess that's good enough for now, eh? Yeah.
You've got a great place to go visit, obviously, someday while he's over there for 10 months. Is this a professional gig for
Indeed.
him?
It's a development academy, so it'd be in the English pyramid system. It's sort of right on the cusp of contractual semi-pro soccer world, and he's hungry. I think he's quite good. I'm a little biased, but most importantly, he's just he's got an electric personality. He's very social and very kind and very full of faith. And so I know God has a wonderful plan for him, and I just can't wait to see how that plays out for sure.
You must be so proud.
Indeed, we are.
That's awesome.
Indeed we are. Yeah.
Chris, I would say from someone in the tourism business, Muletown Coffee is more than just a business. It's an iconic brand for the community. It's an iconic business for the community. It's an anchor, if you will. With your service in the military, and now not only being in business, but also serving through business, if you will, how do those two things connect for you as far as coming from the military and now the service you do for your community?
That's a great question. I think that I might have a little different perspective on this. I think the idea of a calling, while it's very, very true and it's a very real thing, I think you don't truly experience the calling until you're in it. So, there's no way, I don't think, at 17 I could possibly have known that the military was a calling. I did it because my family did it, right? And let's be honest, the girls like the uniform, right? Can we just be honest here, right? So at 17, I put the uniform on thinking this is going to be cool. When I got in, of course, very quickly you realize this is something so much greater than yourself. And all the trite words and phrases that you could use, they're all just very true, right? When you put the uniform on and you experience things, you realize the world is so much more about everything else but you. And it's the same in business, really. Muletown Coffee began as a simple idea with a couple of guys that were musicians and friends. One in particular, Chris Weniger, my good friend and founder of the company, and I think they just wanted a gathering place for people to come together and have what I believe is very exceptional coffee, but a place to be and to be recognized and to be present. And so, what better vehicle than coffee to do that? So once you're in business, you do realize quickly not only how difficult it is, but what a privilege truly it is to have a business and to serve people in a way other than some commoditized transactional way, but in a very relational way. So you realize the calling once you're in it, and then if you fully embrace it, boy, it changes your life. Indeed. Yeah. And that's exactly what's happened with Muletown Coffee.
And it feels like you have a responsibility to your community too. For us, we run the Welcome Center, and you think you're just opening your doors 7 days a week and make sure you have stuff on the shelf, but you have to be very thoughtful about it, and you have a responsibility to your community, which, as you say, is a privilege.
Indeed.
As well as a responsibility. So.
Yeah, every walk of life coming into the cafe, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? We get to meet so many wonderful people, and you realize that not only is it a privilege, but you have people come, they tend to count on you for their day.
Yeah.
To see their friends, to meet with their, coworkers. We have ministry, we have school kids, we have first dates, all kinds of things that, and you realize that takes an awful lot of work to keep that pure and honest and good. And that's what we try to do, honestly, every day.
There's a great energy in there. When we have our meetings over there occasionally, our Monday morning meetings, if you weren't quite, with it, or you weren't awake yet, you walk in there, man, the energy level is incredible. So
it's so great to hear.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We talked earlier in the previous segments about our architects of history, those historical figures for Columbia that have been influential, so many. If one of those historical figures were to walk down the streets of Columbia today, what do you think they would be proud of or see differently or maybe think feels the same?
Wow, what a fabulous question.
Yeah.
That is. Boy, rich history. That's the best way really to describe this area. And a transplant, I feel very much like a native now, but somebody coming in, I don't think could fully realize the role that this entire area has played in our history. I think if some of our ancestors were to walk down the road, first of all, just in 15 years, how much our little town has changed.
Yeah.
How much it's sort of grown up and I think found itself in new ways, right? Really found itself in new ways. I think our ancestors would be very, very proud of the energy that we have here. There's a lot of really great authentic energy to who we are, welcoming people from just everywhere. I mean, all over the country. In our cafe, how many times people walk in and we realize where they're from and they're visiting, and often they say we're visiting, but we're also looking, right?
Oh yes,
because as you well know, they find something very pure and very honest here. I guess if we're being honest, they would also be just the world in general. They would be somewhat disappointed that we managed to find unique ways every day to divide one another.
Yeah.
And that can be a little disheartening. Yeah, so I think that they would not be so proud of us. I think that we would get a hand slap for not being more kind and not coming together as one. We could do that a whole lot more, and I think we all agree on that, regardless of what perspectives we have. So they would be proud. I think they would also want us to do better.
Well put.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, because in the business community, often in the more successful communities, the business community kind of transcends the differences and businesses come together and collaborate. And I think Columbia is a perfect example of that, where you do have a strong business community that supports one another. In your view, putting that on a parallel with the American story, what role do you believe small businesses in particular play in keeping that American story alive? I mean, we all know what that dream is, but how do we keep the story alive with those connections through the business community?
Sure, yeah. The first word that comes to mind is diversity, but not so much as a noun, but as a verb. The business community represents a very diverse group of folks who have multiple visions. But there's a beautiful thread that runs through it. Quite honestly, in some days, it's just coming together to stay alive, right? It's a very, very challenging times to run a business, irrespective of what industry you're in. And so the idea that businesses would be able to, in their own way, share what they believe the American story is. There's a lot of commonality there, of course. We learned from, History 101 our entire lives, the beauty of what America represents, but also how it's being redefined in some ways. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that the more input that we have and the more we allow people's natural personalities and charisms and belief in one another, the more that comes together, the more the American story becomes less history book and more authentic, right? Really authentic. And we're not all the same, nor do we want to be all the same. We want very much to have a beauty in fabric and how we create new businesses, how we come together to help one another in challenging times. Boy, there's nothing, I think, more authentic for a business owner than feeling a struggle and knowing you're not alone. Today is your day to struggle, but tomorrow it may be your neighbor's day. And the more we're able to come together and help one another, the more we, not so much reshape, because I know that's a dangerous word and gets people triggered, but to make the American story a very believable, beautiful thing that you want to sink your teeth into and want to own.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, certainly a continuing narrative for sure. And well, Chris, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for what you do at Muletown, and thanks for your contribution to the community now, and thank you for your service to our country.
Yes, thank you so
it's
much
been
for your
great
service.
What a
talking
great
to you.
opportunity. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
As we look forward to America 250 and the roles that communities like Columbia play, learn more about the America 250 story. I'll let you do the website this time. Columbia250USA.com. Been listening to Tennessee Unpacked. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning into the Tennessee Unpacked podcast. Be sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review. Until next time, we'll see you on the next one.